The collapse of the FTX crypto exchange platform has once again put the spotlight on cryptocurrencies. FTX's collapse comes months after Terra, Three Arrows Capital, and a host of other industry-leading firms imploded. Is it time to call time on cryptos? Or could it be that it's time to change how cryptos are handled? And are cryptocurrencies still the next stage in financial evolution as predicted? And more importantly, what is the future of crypto in Africa? Joining me now is Chris Maurice. He's the CEO and co-founder of Yellow Card Africa, which is Africa's largest cryptocurrency exchange. And Chris is also working on expanding Yellow Card's presence across Africa and the Middle East. Now, Chris, I know you followed the conversation and the issues around FTX very closely in the past few days, basically a week or even less than that, everything has really imploded. So let's start with the lessons. What do you think are some of the lessons, particularly a company such as yours and others operating in the cryptocurrency space, are taking from the implosion of FTX?
Yeah, I mean, well, thank you for having me. I think the big takeaway from FTX is don't steal $10 billion from your customers and then lie about it, right? That's probably a good one. Don't live in a house with your 8 executives in the Bahamas and steal $10 billion. That's right. I think in all seriousness, right? I think the main thing that exchanges all over the world can learn from this is that transparency is important when you're being trusted with user funds, right? When people are trusting you with their money, then there's some level of transparency and responsibility that needs to come with that, right? And so I think exchanges all over the world can do a better job of displaying that they have those user funds or being regulated, right?
Mm. And you've mentioned the key word here. So this is sort of a dual-parted, rather a two-sided question, because one, there are a number of industry analysts that have said that there are red flags that would not have been ignored in a traditional financial institution with some of the things that were happening at FTX. But also beyond that, the whole point of cryptocurrency has been the decentralized, unregulated space. This ability for people to be anonymous. And we've seen it before. We've seen situations like this. So when we talk about the potential for regulation, which has really reared its head with the FTX situation, what do you think it is? Does this push more for regulation of the crypto space? What would that even look like?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to say that there are red flags that would have been caught at a traditional financial institution, because this is exactly what banks do, right? Banks take your money and then loan your money out to other people, right? FTX was doing essentially the same thing. They just weren't as good at it as a traditional bank may have been, right? And so it's hard to say. It's hard to say that those are red flags when that's just how the banking system works, right? And that's what the banking system allows for. I think when we talk about regulation, right, at the end of the day, the reason that this debacle was able to happen is because regulators have not done a good job of taking these companies in, right? FTX and a company of the size of FTX should not be regulated in the Bahamas, right? The Bahamas' entire GDP is less than $20 billion. And FTX was doing $2 billion a day in transaction volume, right? So there's a big mismatch there in terms of the amount of money that these guys were handling and the jurisdiction that they were being regulated out of, right? And so I think that what this really should be is a wake-up call for regulators across the world, especially in Africa, that if you don't enact friendly and intelligent regulations that encourage the industry and encourage innovation, you're not going to stop it. All you're going to do is drive these companies offshore, right? These companies are just going to go set up in Malta and the Bahamas and in places like that, and then operate from there without the oversight and regulation that countries can provide on the ground.
And so that brings us now to really what is this topic in terms of the future of cryptocurrency. We've seen the body language, I'll use that word, of many African governments. Here in Nigeria, we've seen that it's been banned. In other countries, there's some movement towards opening up the financial space. We're seeing banks as well get into it. We're seeing central banks get involved with the CBDCs as well. But when you look at the conversation around recognizing and legalizing cryptocurrencies in Africa, what do you think the impact would be on the continent's financial space?
I think it's extremely positive, right? And I would say that, well, regulators on the continent have traditionally not been very friendly towards the space. We've seen, especially this year, a lot of that sentiment start to change, right? And we're seeing more and more countries that are, how do you say, starting to really take the idea of adopting crypto and adopting crypto regulation seriously. And so I think that overall it has a lot to offer the continent, right? In if nothing else, it has a lot to offer in way of jobs and companies paying taxes that have the potential to set up here, right? And so this is any time that I'm speaking with a regulator, or, central bank officer, anything along those lines. I like to remind them that there's really three central jobs of regulation, right? Number one is to protect consumers, which obviously could have happened better with the FTX case, where FTX.com was unregulated, right? There was no protection for consumers. Number two is to stop scams, right? Which has, traditionally there's been a number of issues across the continent with various different projects, that turned out to be scams. And number three, which often gets forgotten, is to promote innovation, right? It's actually part of the regulator's job is to actually promote this innovation, promote new technology that moves the economy forward, that increases, the amount of jobs in a country and an economy. And so I think overall that's really what what we're going to continue to harp on to regulators is, look, this space has a lot to offer in terms of jobs, in terms of economic growth, in terms of bringing new technologies in. And you can make it safer by overseeing it, right? By enacting regulations that don't allow companies to use user funds for things like FTX was using them for, right? And so there are definitely ways to make this industry safer and to make it more available and more friendly for everybody.
Mm. And as you mentioned, there seems to be a change in sort of the conversation and the verbiage and the body language around cryptocurrencies on the continent. And we also see that Yellow Card recently received a license which formally permits the exchange to let its users buy and sell stable coins in Botswana using the country's fiat currency. So there is movement happening. Where do you think Africa goes from here? Where is the wave that a company such as Yellow Card is going to be in front of?
Yeah, so again, I think the big thing that we're focused on is working with regulators across the continent on how do you promote this industry in a way that, again, is good for the country, right? Increases jobs, increases the tax base, and also protects consumers, right? And I think that we did a really great job. Our team working with the Bank of Botswana and working with the financial regulators in Botswana on the creation of this license, right? And so, like you mentioned, Botswana has now issued the first ever crypto license on the African continent. And so I think that bodes very well for the industry moving forward, right? I'm hoping that other countries will follow the example of Botswana and will sort of look to that as an example of how to do it properly, right? And how to do it with, again, with good oversight that, creates jobs, that, it enables companies to come and operate there, but then also keeps people safe.
And keeps people safe is the paramount thing. So, Chris, before I let you go, we talk a lot about the future, but one of the things we've seen that has come to be, which seems to have been a future conversation for many years across the continent, was the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Where does cryptocurrency find itself in that conversation? What do you think it's going to be? Sort of a marriage, a duel? What do you think it's going to look like?
Yeah, so I think my opinion on crypto is that crypto is the only tool in the world that truly enables free trade, right? Because with crypto, you control your own money. And so if I have, $100 and I need to, import something, then there's no bank that can stop me, right? I don't have to apply to, change the currency in that other country, anything like that, right? Crypto really enables free trade because it allows money to move around freely. And so it's hard to say. It's hard to see a future for the African Free Trade Agreement that does not include crypto in some way, shape, or form when it comes to making payments, when it comes to moving money between countries. right? I think, I mean, we've seen plenty of regional trade agreements on the continent that haven't worked out for various different reasons. Normally because banks don't get along, right? Right? And, banks in South Africa and banks in Zambia might not like each other, right? And banks in Nigeria and banks in Ghana might not, get along and might not be able to agree on, how to exchange currency between each other and how to move money between each other, right? Crypto makes all of that so much easier, and it does so in a form that can actually be controlled by the continent. And that's really the beauty of it. And that's why we encourage all these countries to adopt crypto, is because with crypto, you can control your own money. It's not dollars that are actually sitting out of London or New York, right? It's money that is actually controlled by the country, by the government, by the bank, by, whoever owns it.
All right, Chris, before I let you go, I'm sneaking this in. And a yes or a no, and then a one-sentence answer that follows that. Do you think people should let the FTX situation put them off of cryptocurrencies?
No. FTX is a centralized exchange that was completely unregulated and did some shady things. Don't let it put you off of crypto as a whole. Just use regulated and trusted exchanges.
All right, Chris Maurice, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And it's one conversation we'll continue to follow. As Lekan told you earlier, 477, I had to stress that, $1 million of customers' funds are somehow unaccounted or lost. But that's a conversation happening overseas. Here on the continent, the conversation around crypto adoption and regulation continues. And we see people like Yellow Card deciding that there is a future for the African continent in cryptos, and they want to make it happen. You're watching Business Edge. I'm handing over to Lekan Obanjo to give you NC4 to watch and wrap things up.